Hello again, Pastor Michael Jarbo here. Welcome to another edition of Soul Care, conversations to help renew the spirit. I'm glad you're here. Check out today's episode. Okay, well, welcome to another edition of Soul Care. I'm Pastor Michael Jarbo. Good to see you all. And I'm here with Pastor Juanita Rasmus, who's going to be talking with us today. Hello, Juanita.
Hey, good to be with you.
Thank you for being with us. I know you're in Indianapolis right now, so thank you. You've got your second granddaughter you just welcomed in.
Yes! Well, actually, she's our first granddaughter, our second grandchild. So she has a brother.
She's got a brother.
He's 3 years old, and he's not letting us forget that he's the first grandbaby.
I bet he isn't. Yep, that feels right. Yes, and so Juanita, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit, share your ministry in the United Methodist Church, but you've got your hands in all sorts of different areas of Houston and beyond. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about your story for us?
Thank you, Pastor Michael. So my husband, Rudy, and I are pastors, co-pastors together at St. John's downtown. We started the church 28 years ago. We were members at Windsor Village with Pastor Kirby John, and we were sensing a call to urban ministry. And Kirby John gave us an opportunity, and you know how they say the rest is history. We started with 9 members, and we grew about 500 members a year for a number of years. So there are thousands and thousands of people who have called St. John's home. I like to think of St. John's as kind of an emergency room for people who are experiencing distress and despair. We started, as I said, with the homeless community by providing meals, then ultimately shower and laundry facilities. And then from there, we established Temenos CDC, which provides housing. We've got about $30 million of housing in downtown Houston for formerly homeless individuals. That's kind of how our ministry started. From there, like I said, the church grew pretty rapidly. And I learned over time that I'm a contemplative. So I enjoy preaching, teaching, praying, and listening. And I recognize that Eugene Peterson's book, The Contemplative Pastor, helped me to put a name on what my call was. I had, up until that time, I was doing the roles, but it was like, why is it I don't really like the administrative piece? And why don't I, and so his book gave me permission to utilize my gifts and to recognize that I'm a contemplative. And so I pray and hope that my work all emanates out of that kind of deep presence of abiding with God. I invest time listening in prayer, not only for myself, for others, and certainly during this time, we're all called to pray as we find ways of being, learning to be during COVID-19, learning to be. What about learning to be a nation together? What about that? What would happen if we all took enough time to notice our own inclinations and invited God to help bring an awareness that included our neighbor?
Right.
So that's kind of where I am. I'm a spiritual director. I was trained by Sister Mary Dennison at the Spiritual Directors Institute at the Cynical. Many of you have probably gone on retreats at the Cynical.
Oh, it's nearby.
Yeah. That's kind of, and I'm a grandmother.
And you're a grandmother. And you know what? Isn't it amazing, Juanita, that you shared all that? I mean, in like about a minute and a half. And just like, but if you were to take a piece away, I mean, just like, that's a whole lifetime of great ministry, over 30 years. So I just want to say, on behalf of other ministers, just thank you for all your work you and Rudy have done over the course of, decades. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's certainly been a real sense of calling.
Yeah.
And the beauty of when you're called into a place is that within that, there can also be a very strong sense of belonging. And so I'm grateful to have that experience of both.
Okay, let's get into this book. You've got a beautiful picture right behind you, Learning to Be. Yeah, I know, it's perfect. Finding your center after the bottom falls out. How did you listen to many things, and listening is definitely a big player within being able to write something, especially a book helping helping folk out. So talk to me about how you got your start with writing. What is it? How has that helped your soul? And then maybe even tied into that question, why this book right now in September of 2020?
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's something called divine timing. And this book is certainly a product of that. Because this book really, I've written this book 3 times. This is the 3rd time. So you know how they say the 3rd time should be the charm? Well, the first time I wrote it was immediately or shortly after. I say immediately, it was probably within a year or 2 after my experience of what I call the crash in learning to be. And that was my experience of a major depressive episode. I have always been a writer. I started writing when I was in elementary school, but not necessarily consistently. And then, of course, as a pastor, Rudy and I have often rotated so that if he wasn't preaching, I was preaching. Then over time, we added other pastoral staff to the preaching ministry. So it meant that basically at least once a month, I would be preaching. And so I love writing messages and sermons and Bible studies and that kind of thing. When this book was being germinated in the days after my recovery from being diagnosed with a major depressive episode, our church was at one of its growth spurts. There was just Rudy and I. There was a secretary on staff, and I found myself unable to get out of bed, and it lasted quite a long time. My psychiatrist told me that it was while the DSM-4, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual for Diagnosing Mental Health Disorders and so forth, said that it was a major depressive episode, I told my friends, and I say in the book, my grandmother would have called it a nervous breakdown. She didn't know anything about a DSM-4. But what I realized is that I was living in ministry in the perfect storm. The environment was charged with people in need, people who were in many cases desperate for a sense of self, desperate for housing, desperate because of mental illness, desperate because of substance abuse. Many who were in recovery from substance abuse. We had a powerful 12-step community there, Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, all AA, everything. So here there is this woman who is pastoring who is also an addict. And she's addicted to performance and approval and acceptance. Ooh. And there's probably no better candy store for that kind of addict than the ministry that we had at St. John. Oh. So it was a perfect storm. Oh. It was the place where I came to realize that while I had been trying to empower others in healing, now it was my turn. And so in the course of the recovery from the depression, the Spirit just spoke to me and said, I'm going to give you the treasures out of this darkness. And when God said that in my spirit, even as depleted as I was, I couldn't pray, I couldn't read, I couldn't hold the responsibilities of a wife and mother. I was in bed, I couldn't get out. I slept 18 to 20 hours a day, taking medication, seeing a psychotherapist, seeing a psychiatrist, and yet something else was needed. And I came to realize that really I was experiencing all of that plus the dark night of the soul. So when I heard God say, I'll give you the treasures out of the darkness, which is out of Isaiah 45, I think it is. If it's not 45, it's 48. I realized that I probably needed to pay attention to the journey. You know, so often when we find ourselves experiencing some kind of devastation, maybe it's a mental health diagnosis or a physical health diagnosis or a divorce or some despair of some kind or sort. Most of us just want to run and get away from it. But when the Spirit spoke that to me, I had this strong sense that I was in school and I was supposed to be taking good notes. And so that's how the book came about.
Wow. Oh man. So I mean, literally a lived experience to write this book.
Exactly. Exactly. But you know, it's no different really from some of the great mothers and fathers of the church. You know, I think about, as an example, St. Francis of Assisi, who is, if I were Catholic, he'd be my patron saint, no doubt. Okay. His story and mine are so similar. Matter of fact, his story, Rudy's and my story is so similar, because Rudy and I both worked with our fathers in business before we got into ministry, as did St. Francis.
Right.
St. Francis went off to war. He thought he was going to be a war hero. He ended up getting wounded. And in the recovery, he had his dark night of the soul, his experience of God, and God giving him direction in terms of how he wanted him to serve. And his was to rebuild the church. He thought it meant the physical church, but God meant rebuild the community called church, if you will. But that whole experience for me helped me to see that, you know, Saint Teresa of Avila, same thing,
right.
Illness. And so often these illnesses aren't defined and described like because we know so much now, we can define illnesses better. Right. But we recognize that their experience of illness became, as the scripture says, lest a grain of wheat falls to the ground and cracks open, it cannot bear fruit. And there's a spiritual cracking open that we can experience, and it's called the dark night of the soul. And so what I'm hoping is that Learning to Be will help a contemporary audience name a spiritual experience that is available to us, and that we won't take our traditional American posture and try to run ahead of it and get away from it, but rather we'll turn to it and say, why are you here? And what do you have to teach me?
Wow. Okay. Stop. You're so good. I got to go to the next question because it's so good. You talk about illness. So then my question for you, Pastor Juanita, is can we learn to be even in the middle of a global pandemic?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So how? And why is it important to find our center during times like these?
Okay. Well, first of all,
right? It's you know,
exactly.
So individual dark night of the soul, but then
exactly.
How do we find? Go.
So here's the deal. A number of weeks into this pandemic, my youngest daughter is a psychiatrist. My oldest daughter has several degrees in psychology. And I asked my youngest daughter, I said, you know, I feel this heaviness.
Right.
It's not depression, but I can't explain it. I said, and I feel like I'm not thinking as clearly. And so I just kind of shared with her what I was feeling. And she said, Mama, that's allostatic load. Now, the reason that's important to us is think about an event that you were looking forward to, maybe a wedding or a great concert. You know, all of us probably have some concert that will all go down as the all-time best concert we've ever attended, right? And so you got to the parking lot of that concert, you could feel the buzz in the air, right? You get inside the stadium or whatever the facility is where the concert is, you can feel the energy. You can't wait. Nobody struck a note on a drum yet, but you can feel it, right? And so that is the positive experience of allostatic load. It's the anticipation of something good.
Right.
But what we're experiencing is the spiraling down, the more negative experience of allostatic load. That is the global uncertainty. And it has a weight attached to it. And so the weight that it has attached was very similar to the weight I experienced in depression. So what is it that we can offer ourselves in this space? I want to suggest to you, I just finished speaking just minutes before I joined you, Pastor Michael. And so I gave an acronym that I'd like to share. It's pretty much woven throughout Learning to Be, but I just decided today we're going to make it an acronym.
Okay.
And the acronym is this: during this global pandemic, where we're also experiencing a social justice uprising.
Yes, right, correct.
Where our nation is being invited to pay attention to the Black and brown neighbor.
Right.
Where we're having to rethink our ways of being, especially now that we're talking about social distancing and mask wearing and all the physical protocols that we're now living with. Here's the key. You ready for this? You need a pen and paper so you can write it down. Breathe. It's an acronym. Breathe. The B is breathe. And so I want to ask you and your audience right now, if you will, to take some deep breaths and to breathe in through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth like you're blowing bubbles when you were a kid. Stay with me. You keep breathing while I'll share. Breathe in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. And then notice what you're noticing. When we take time to stop, take some breaths, observe our environment, observe our inner environment, then we can proceed. So the first step for caring for ourselves during all that's happening as disorientation is to breathe intentionally. I do 30 minutes of meditative breathing every morning. And throughout the day, I treat myself as though I were a chain smoker. And I stop and I breathe. I encourage that for all of us. The R is rest. One of the things that we have to notice is that this takes a lot of energy, living through all of this. That's the weight of the allostatic load. So give yourself permission to rest. Sometimes rest means saying no. It means setting healthy boundaries. It means reevaluating how much you have on your to-do schedule, how much is on your plate, your platter, and paying attention, noticing what you're noticing, what really matters right now, what really counts. Here's another way of putting that. What do you love? And I'll talk a little more about that. But rest. So breathe, then rest. Then the E is exercise. It's so important for us to maintain a mind-body connection. And when I say exercise, it doesn't have to be that you're doing an hour at the gym, but what about turning on your favorite teenage music and shake, rattling, and rolling to it? You know what I'm saying? Doing some of those dances. I was in a workshop. That was a 1-week workshop on Zoom, 8 hours a day. Ooh. And so about tell me about it. I went into it going, okay, God, help me be ready to sit down for 8 hours every day on the Zoom camera, okay? And what they did was so profoundly wise. They gave us exercise, and it was dance breaks. Every 35, 45 minutes or so, they would turn on this high energy music. Now, there's a science behind this too, that if you're learning something and it's in a fun environment, you'll retain it, and you'll retain it with a sense of and a measure of pleasure. So they'd have us get up and we dance a little bit, and it was no dances you needed practice for. Okay, everybody, let's be an airplane. Okay, I think we can pretty much all do that. All right, everybody, let's do the hula hoop, all right? So we're hula hooping, right? Everybody, we're doing the breaststroke, all right? All right, so everybody, we're doing the backstroke, okay? And so get up. Exercise, move around, allow the mind and the body to reconnect, because many of us are sitting now more than ever before. Right. So plan some time to exercise and make it breaks, exercise breaks with good music that you really like. So the A in breathe is affirm. Affirm yourself. Affirm that I am giving my best self in this moment. Affirm if you need to pull away from a moment. I am not present. I am not fully here. Right. I am in need of a break. Okay? So affirm to yourself what you need. Remember, all of us still have an inner child that's longing for us to care and protect and provide. And so no matter what age we are, if you're older than a teenager, you've got an infant in you, you have a toddler in you, you have a pre-adolescent in you. And then let's say that you're my age, you've got a 30-year-old in you, a 40-year-old in you, a 50-year-old in you, and they're all saying, okay, now you're the boss. How are you going to take care of us in the midst of this crisis? So affirm yourself. Another way of saying that, be kind. Be kind to yourself, and then you'll have the capacity to be kind to those in your home and your workplace. Affirm yourself. Affirm that you're showing up. Affirm that you're giving the best that you have for today. You know, a dear friend of mine and a mentor, Dallas Willard, said this about the Lord's Prayer, where it says, give us this day. Every day is different.
Every day.
We need something new and different every day. Then the two is tune and breathe. Tune into your needs, tune into what gives you life, tune into what you love, but also tune into what's not life-giving. Turn up the volume on what's giving you life, turn down the volume on what's not life-giving. The H in breathe, now you're probably thinking, what could the H be? Stay hydrated.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Stay hydrated, because the mind and body both function best off water. Mm-hmm. The tendency might be to have a little more alcohol now, you know, a little extra glass of wine, a little extra beer because of the stress we're experiencing. But stay hydrated. Water is your best friend during COVID-19, all right? The last letter, the H is for hydrate. The last letter is E. The E is engage. Engage what gives you life, fun, creativity. Your friend that's humorous, call them more than once every week. You know, 5 minutes today, and then heck, call them another 5 minutes tomorrow if you need a little more humor. Engage life. And here's what I want to get you to do. Bring your hands out in front of you like this. And I'm going to see if I can do it. I might have to fold my arm. But keep your arms in front, and then you say, I am open to receive and to give love. Let's do it again.
Okay.
I am open to receive and to give love. That's what engaging is all about. Staying open to receive it first and then to give it. So breathe to make it through COVID-19.
And my tendency was to say give first, but you have to be willing to receive.
You can't give what you don't have. So receive it first.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Juanita is going to be preaching at the Journey for the next few weeks. I mean, that was, oh, I'm going to live by that acronym, and I think more people should.
I hope so.
Thank you so much. I did not know what H was going to be, but hydrate is so important. Oh my gosh.
Well, you know, our body is like 90% water,
right.
And the brain is one of the first places that begins to, well, the second place. First place is our bowels. And we need to be keeping stuff flushed out of us, because this is a toxic experience we're having. So we need our body to stay fresh and healthy and cleansed. And then the second place that uses a lot of water is the brain. Our ability to process, to function, and to think creatively, because the mind that has created the world we're in right now is not the mind that will create the solutions. So stay hydrated.
Man, okay. For time purposes, I got to keep going, but I want to keep just picking, and maybe offline we'll talk more about
Let's
this.
do it again. Let's do it again.
We might do the first ever round 2 of Soul Care with Pastor Juanita Rasmus. Okay.
I would love it.
Thanks. All right. So, question for you: what have you learned? And you're a very introspective person. So, what have you learned during this time of quarantine? About yourself, what and of course you've written a book recently, but like kind of wrap it all together. What have you learned? And I know we still, you know, we're not out of the woods yet, but what have you maybe learned right now that you can say?
So
go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Well, so one of the book is titled Learning to Be. And so here's what I've learned. I'm still learning to be because circumstances and situations change. Remember, I said my initial critical experience was the diagnosis with depression. But here we are again, as now globally finding ourselves in this place of disorientation. Whenever there's a new challenge on the horizon, we're learning to be within that framework. And so one of the things I learned about myself is that being quarantined at home with my husband, who I typically work from home, but my husband is usually at the church office or he's at a coffee shop because he likes to work at coffee shops. We've been quarantined at home together. The house had been my space.
Oh.
And so now I'm learning to let go of my need to control my space because it's really our space.
And a lot of married couples, whether they've been married for 5 years or 50 years, have had to learn that.
Exactly. And so we're always learning based on the new experience of disorientation. There's always some new opportunity to notice what we're noticing, then decide if we want to do more of that thing and it would give us life, or less of that thing so that we can have life that is life-giving.
And it leads right into this last question before I do our speed 11 round with you and I that I always look forward to. As a good Methodist pastor, we know about our man, John Wesley. And John would always ask his fellow pastors, not how are you today, but the question below the question. You and I know it. How is it with your soul? And so, Pastor Juanita, today, how is it with your soul? And listen, this question has birthed tears from people and has birthed, even during the interview, it's birthed laughter, it's birthed reflection. Allow this to be a space and just know that it's safe. And I just want to ask, how is it with your soul today, Pastor Juanita?
So here's what I realize. That I can go through almost anything as long as I'm cultivating an attitude of gratitude. And so my soul is grateful today. I'm grateful because I have my health. I'm grateful because I can still create new possibilities for my family and for those I love and for our greater world. I'm grateful because I'm finding that my soul is far more expansive and resilient than I might have thought I was. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I have the practice of the examine at night during this time, because the examine invites me to look at, as I said earlier, what's given me life today. I don't want to go through COVID-19 and just say, check, I made it through. But in my appointment book, I'm writing down things that stood out for me, a word or a phrase or some act of kindness that came my way. And so my soul is good, Michael. And it's good because I understand the importance of daily gratitude. And here's the other thing I'm learning. Don't wait till a special occasion to eat dessert. Sometimes just eat dessert. Don't even worry about the meal, because we might not be around for the meal. All right.
All right. I'm writing that down and breathe. Yeah.
And keep some good chocolate in the house.
Yes. Okay. Wise words from Pastor Juanita. Thank you. All right, here we go. You ready for the speed round?
I'm ready.
We're going to move through. And I'm looking for, get ready. And it could be, I'm going to just go through and answer as quick, as long or short as you want. All right, here we go.
Question I'm ready.
Question number one, fill in the blank. Ministry is
as exciting and demanding and challenging and creative as you wanted it to be.
Pastor Juanita, you're called to be brave in a moment, but you can feel the fear beginning to make itself known to you. What's one of the first things that you begin to do?
Take some deep breaths. Stop, take a breath, observe, and then notice what I'm noticing, and then choose the way I'll proceed.
What's something that people often get wrong about you?
Often people think I'm an extrovert because I'm good at gab, but I'm an introvert. So, when I get through with this, I'm going to go lay down.
I would have never seen you as an introvert, but that is...
Most people don't think that.
You got me. You got me on that one. The last TV show you binged and loved.
I can't even tell you the name of it, but I think it's on Netflix, and it's this show where there's this mature Asian woman who's from India who's helping to make arranged marriages. And I watched like 4 back-to-back series of that show. It was fascinating to me to watch this woman bring these couples together from all over the world. It was incredible, and I loved every minute of it.
I will look that up. I will try to find that. That's interesting. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, Black Panther. A number of reasons. One, because that movie empowered African Americans in this nation to feel a sense of community. And we haven't had an opportunity like that in a long time. So I'm grateful for that movie. And the young man, Chadwick Boswick, I think is his name, who just recently passed from, I think it was prostate cancer or pancreatic cancer, one or the other. That was a profound movie. It had lessons on so many levels, but the most general was that how it galvanized African Americans to feel a sense of unity and community that we've not known in a long time.
What's a concert that you'll never forget? You talked about concerts a little earlier.
I did. Oh gosh. Okay. Can I say, instead of a concert, can I say a conference?
Absolutely.
Okay. So last year or either the year before was one of my daughter's birthdays, and we wanted to do something special for her birthday. So I wanted to see Michelle Obama with her book Becoming. I couldn't find tickets in the United States because I guess I just waited too long, but I found that there were some tickets available in Canada. So my daughters and I hit the road, did a road trip, and went to go see Michelle Obama and talking about her narrative story, Becoming. And so that was profound for me. It was amazing on a lot of different levels. Number one, the stadium was 99.9% whites. And so I was one of my daughters and I were just a handful of the Blacks who were there. And to know that her message resonated with women, all women,
right,
was really profound. So that I will remember that for a very long time.
That is a good answer, and I am jealous of that gift you got to have. That's awesome. What are you reading right now as an author? What are you reading?
Oh my gosh, I have so many books. It's really, I'm in several learning modalities right now, and each of them has about 10 books that over the course of the next 2 years we'll be reading. And so one of the books that I'm reading is called Joy Unspeakable by Dr. Oh my gosh, I just went blank. It's Joy Unspeakable. Oh, help me, Lord.
Joy Unspeakable. That's good.
It's Joy Unspeakable. I'm just blank.
That's okay.
But anyway, it's an incredible book about the experience of the church and its spiritual practice for the African American community. That we have had spiritual practices that we didn't know to name as spiritual practices. And so she's helping us to see them in this new light, in this light of spiritual direction, in this light of transformation, in this light of this space that we're finding ourselves in as a people. The other book I'm learning, which is kind of reading, is almost the the other opposite extreme is because of the two streams that I'm in right now. I'm in what's called the Living School with Richard Rohr. So one of the books I'm reading in his stream is The Naked Now. And that's a book about having a sense of understanding the self, as well as paying attention to what it means to be in this present moment, grounding ourselves so that we can be fully present, so that we can present and come to know our most authentic self for this spiritual experience we're having. Because COVID-19 is not just a mental experience. It's not just a physical experience. Right. It is a spiritual experience.
Ooh. What's on your bedside table right now?
Oh, okay. I have a lamp, which has ambient lighting. And I also have a picture of my husband. I have a framed quote, and the quote says, "Everything I need will be made available in divine right order. Everything I need to know will be revealed." I also have a wooden folding fan, accordion fan, because I'm a woman of a certain age and I have to fan every now and then. I have a writing pen because I often read in bed and I like to underline things. I have some essential oil because I like to put some on sometimes right before as I'm waking up in the morning or right as I'm going to sleep. Sometimes it's lavender, sometimes it's lemon something, citrusy. Is there anything else on that table? That's it.
You win the award for the most transparent about your bedside table. I love it.
Wow.
Good job.
Okay.
Congratulations. All right. Pastor Juanita, what's a snapshot of a moment in your life that brings you joy?
This isn't a moment that has manifested, but it's one that keeps showing up in my dreams. And I am standing on a stage of a place that's probably about the size of Carnegie Hall or Wortham Theater or Jones Hall. And the me that's on the stage sees me standing backstage and comes to me backstage and hugs me, and we twirl around, and then together we walk out to center stage and we become one. Woo! And we bow and we say, "We did it. Good work." And so for me, that is about me living my more expansive self. It's about me taking this message of learning to be into the wider, broader world, and being able to say to myself that I had done the job well. So that gives me a lot of joy.
And now tell me one thing right now that you're deeply grateful for.
I'm deeply grateful for family. Being here with my daughters. My oldest daughter is here. She's on a fellowship in Indianapolis, and she'll be in the mayor's office. My youngest daughter and son-in-law work here and live here with our grandchildren. Rudy was here and is now back in Houston to care for his mom and be present to my parents. And so family.
Family.
You know, if I had an acrostic for family, it would be fantastic, amazing, mind-blowing, endless possibilities, love, and what would the Y be? Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. I like the Y. All right. Last question. When our time here on earth is done, what do you hope is the first thing that God says to you when you reach heaven?
Oh, I love this question. I hope God leans in and says, "Juanita, did you have some fun?" Because most of the time it's not about the stuff that we think, the deep, heavy stuff. God is saying, I hope you're going to have fun. I hope you'll live your most expansive self. I hope you won't let other people's doubts and fears keep you from skydiving, as I mentioned, and learning to be. I hope you'll live your best self, because in so doing, you'll give other people permission to live their best self.
Mm. Thank you so much. Before we go, you just did so beautiful. Thank you. We will have to talk seriously offline about round 2. and go deeper into some of these questions because it was so good. Can you speak a little bit about the book? Maybe plug it just briefly. Tell people where
Sure.
they can purchase it and when it comes out, because it comes out next Tuesday, correct?
Yes, it does. Well, the book can be purchased anywhere that books can be purchased. But I want to read to you what Andrea White, the former mayor's wife, said. She said, every perfectionist should read this book. Every Southern good girl, every person who has ever felt empty. And so that's Mayor Bob White's wife, Andrea White, sharing her thoughts about this. I'll say also that Beyonce's mama, Tina Knowles Lawson, wrote the foreword for me because they grew up at St. John's.
Right, yes.
And this book is for anyone who's ever had the rug of life pulled from under their feet. This is a book about resilience. It's about my personal story with depression, but you can put anything in the place of that depression that you need to, and you'll find some practical spiritual practices to help you to cultivate resilience. That's what learning to be is all about.
My copy's coming in soon. I can't wait for it. Thank you again, Juanita. Have a wonderful day. I appreciate your
Likewise. And
so
blessings. And as we said, St. John's, to you and to your audience, we love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. Make it a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Michael. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for checking out Soul Care. Join us again next week at noon on Friday. Have a great weekend. Bye.